And here in the Hyundai Texans radio studio, we have Executive Vice President and General Manager Nick Caserio. Nick, welcome. Great to have you with us. And I know it's great to talk football. Very serious things going on in the world as well, though.
Yeah, I think it's important just for all of us to acknowledge kind of the occurrences in the Middle East. There's probably people that are directly or indirectly that either we know or that are in our building or that have some affiliation that have been affected by what's gone on over the weekend. I think a lot of times we get caught up in sort of our day-to-day and focus on football and wins and losses, which we have a job to do, but it's also important to acknowledge, the sanctity of human life and the travesty and the tragedy and the devastation that has taken place in Israel. So, I think it's just important for us to acknowledge and provide support where we can to the best of our ability.
All right. Well, thank you for saying that, Nick. And let's get into week 6 here as the Texans are coming off the game against Atlanta. And what do you make of what you saw on Sunday? There were some encouraging things, but there are also some things that you definitely want to correct going into the Saints game as you return home.
Yeah, had our moments, put ourselves in a position to win the game. Ultimately, Atlanta made a few more plays at the end that resulted in the game-winning kick there, in the fourth quarter. So we did some decent things. Offensively, didn't turn the ball over. Defensively, we were able to take the ball away, which has been a huge emphasis, I'd say, on a weekly basis for us. I'd say it comes down to execution and details more than anything. And D'Amico kind of talked about that with the team, to the team. So if we can clean some areas up, we've put ourselves in a position just about every week, giving ourselves an opportunity to win. Even going back to Baltimore, it was 7-6 at halftime. The second half, things kind of got away from us, but had an opportunity against Indy. Played better against Jacksonville and Pittsburgh, and had a chance here against Atlanta against a good team. So hopefully we can get some of the things cleaned up. I can't let what happened on Sunday affect what goes on this week. New team, new set of circumstances, new set of challenges. Hopefully the players come to work with the right mindset here this week, try to have a good week, and try to go into the bye week on a positive note. So be a big challenge in front of us for sure with what New Orleans presents.
Nick, one of the things that stood out to me the last 3-4 weeks in particular, I guess all season too, the end of half, end of game situations. There's a rookie quarterback kind of managing all that, but you kicked a field goal essentially on the last play of the half in 3 games. And in a 2-minute drive in the fourth quarter, when you got to have it for a touchdown, you go and score inside of 2 minutes, a touchdown. What does that speak to, not only about the offense, just everything that goes on, the operation, et cetera, that you've been so good in those situational opportunities?
Yeah, it's everybody involved. It's the players, it's the coaches, it's the communication, understanding of what's needed in those particular situations, what we're trying to accomplish, what are we trying to do, understanding the context of the game, where are we with the timeouts, where are we with the time left, not giving the ball back to the opponent. Say 2-minute situations, it's something that's practiced, and I think everybody understands the intent of what you're trying to do. But it's a credit to the players' understanding. It's a credit to the coaches and everybody involved, and we're able to execute it the way we have, like you mentioned, at the end of some halves. I mean, hopefully that's something that is a strength of ours that we can continue moving forward.
Yeah, and the development of the offense and C.J. Stroud running it, you have opponents that handle them in different ways as these weeks go on, right? There's a constant chess match going on as you go week to week. Can you speak to that a little bit?
You're talking specifically the end of the half, or
just
overall,
in general offensive
opponent?
Execution.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, you go into the game, and whoever you're playing, whatever they're doing defensively, here's the things that they're good at. Here are the things that we have to be cognizant of. Here are the things that we're trying to take away from them. There's going to be things that they try to take away from us. So it's understanding the personnel, it's understanding the scheme, it's understanding the philosophy of how they want to play. And then we've talked about this on the show. Once you get through the first quarter, the game usually declares itself in terms of how it's being played, how they're calling it, what's working for us. So then being able to adjust and adapt continually as you go. And then when you get to the end of game, it's similar to the end of half. It comes down to situational execution. Not that the game is going to change all that drastically, but you're just in a different thought process and a different mindset opposed to, okay, first and second down. Now you're, 2-minute situation, the clock's running down. Trying not to give the ball to the opponent, trying to score with the least amount of time possible. We're trying to prevent them from getting down the field and getting field goal range. So there's just more situational components and elements that come up at the end of half, and then once you get to the end of the game as well. And when you look around the league, even watch the Monday night game last night, it came down to really situational execution, both at the end of half and then the end of the game there as well. I mean, 4th and 1 with 2:20 left, miss a field goal. Green Bay's got to score a touchdown, be able to get a stop, and there's the football game. So it happens, and I don't want to say just about every game. It's usually the majority of the games kind of end up in that situation. There's a few that the score might get tilted one way or the other, but that's life in the NFL.
Yeah, I think it's life in college football, too. I think the University of Miami found that out, not being good at the end of games, but that's me saying that.
Kneel on the ball.
Yes, exactly. Listen to your coaches, the other one. Nick, I'm sure, like Mark, like me, you may get it when you're out shopping for groceries and doing the things that you do out and about town, and you get asked the question, Nick, what about the run game? What about the run game? Because there are flashes, there are bright flashes. You see there's a 15-yard run, and then you find one that's not a 15-yard run for a loss. So there's some good things happening, but then it's not happening consistently enough. What do you see, and what can help the run game, you think, going forward?
Yeah, it's never one thing.
Yep.
I mean, it could be a block here, a read there, running into a bad look. The defense does a good job. So there's a lot of components that go into it. Some of the negative runs put us in some longer yardage situations, so they had a good call, or maybe we could have executed a little bit better, but that's the run game. So I'd say most runs are designed to hopefully get 3 or 4 yards, because then it puts you in a 2nd and 6, 2nd and 7. So you just want to keep it moving forward. So certainly not for lack of effort. We've had our moments, like you mentioned. Certainly something. There's always things that we can improve, just individually and as a team collectively. So whatever we can do to try to improve the situation, that's our responsibility to try to do it. So there've been enough good examples. We have good players. We have good line. We have good backs. So we just have to put it all together. Sometimes you got to tip your hat to the defense as well, because they may have a call that is sort of built for what you call offensively, and that's the way it goes sometimes. So.
Nick, Johnny and I are writing a song called "The Ballad of Derek Rivers" because Derek Rivers has been
who's the lead singer?
Yeah, I might try to vocalize it. Yeah. But it's just interesting because he's been up and down, and even if you go to his Wikipedia page, very often these pages have every transaction associated with the players. Now with Derek, it just says a flurry of moves because he goes up and down. Can you speak to that a little bit about how you do those things, and not necessarily just him, but with the practice squad flexibility?
Yeah, nothing's ever really pre-planned. Sometimes you're trying to take inventory of where you are that week. Think about the game, think about where we're going to be. Say players moving on and off of rosters, sometimes typically you start with the players that are likely going to be inactive if you have to make an activation or you have to sign somebody. I'd say we've had to use their term, a flurry of players and activity of players coming back from injury. So if a player goes from an off-the-roster status IR and you're going to activate them, so you're going to have to figure out ways to get them on the team. So there's the 53-man active roster component, but also manage your practice squad as well. So nothing's ever linear. It's, I'd say, constantly changing and evolving, and it's really a week-to-week endeavor. So we try to do the best we can. I think we've been, I'd say, pretty consistent from the beginning. We try to keep as many people in the building as possible that we want to continue to work with. Derek is certainly a player that fits that category and fits that bill. So as far as the roster mechanizations and just the adjustments we have to make, sometimes they're day-to-day, week-to-week, and you just take the information that you have, try to make a right decision, a good decision, and then just move forward. So I'd say his case, I don't want to say is maybe at times a little extreme, but there's plenty of players that go on and off rosters. They're on the roster, they're off the roster, they're elevated to the game. I mean, I think we've seen, however many elevations that take place on a weekly basis, which are significant. I mean, you guys see the transactions that take place. So some of this is the minutia and the day-to-day of just NFL business and transactions.
Yeah, it is minutia, I would imagine, for you, but getting the right team. That's why I say every single week is a season, because it feels like it is a completely different 7-day animal from one week to the next. And this animal coming up, the New Orleans Saints, Nick, coming into the building. We know a lot of the players, a lot of the names, or people are familiar with them. What have you seen? What's the scouting report on the New Orleans Saints?
Yeah, I'd say big picture, very well coached and a lot of continuity. Just they have a number of players that return from last season. They've incorporated some younger players into their program. But I'd say Dennis has done a good job in his second year, has a good feel. They made a change as defensive coordinator. But Dennis is a huge part of what they're doing. And then Pete has been there for, I want to say, 20-some-odd years. I mean, Pete, Carmichael has been there a long time. Yeah. So and a big change for them offensively was assigning a Derek in the offseason. Derek's been a good player, been very productive, very durable player. And they have a very good complement of skill players. They all haven't been available at one time. Coincidentally, they're all available when they play the Texans. So Kamara returned last week, so he's playing. Mike Thomas has been available. Mike's been a really good football player. Olave's been out there. Olave had a great season as a rookie. And they sort of reshaped, and they have a couple guys hurt at tight end position, but sort of reshaped the tight end position and have made a huge investment in the offensive line. I think they have 4 or 5 first-round picks on the offensive line. So, and they have a good system and they have a good scheme. And I think the guy who it contributes not only offensively but is a huge factor in the kicking game is Shaheed. Yep. So here's a player who wasn't drafted, kind of came out of nowhere, who is a factor offensively, big playability, combo returner. I mean, he certainly presents a lot of problems. So there's a player that they're starting to incorporate a little bit more. Drafted Miller in the 3rd or 4th round, kid from TCU, who's backing up Kamara. So I think they're starting to hit their stride here a little bit offensively. They have a full complement of players that's available. And then defensively, I mean, they're basically top 5 in every major category. Points, rush yards, turnovers, a combination of experienced players and Tyron, DeMario Davis, Cam Jordan. And then juxtapose that with players like Alante Taylor in his second year, his transition to kind of being their slot corner, kind of basically took Roby's spot. And then Lattimore is as good of a corner as there is in the league. And then Brzee, the kid from Clemson, has given them some good snaps on the interior. So good defensive line. I would say 2 really, really good linebackers in Davis and Werner in terms of a pair. They're really a nickel defense. And then in the secondary, Marcus May, they signed him for agency. They get him back off suspension. Tyron's been a good player for a long time. And then they've done a good job at corner. And then I would say, them or Baltimore, probably the best kicking game group we're going to see this season in terms of their core players. JT Gray is outstanding. Lonnie's actually done a really good job finding a niche and a role, Lonnie Johnson, in the kicking game. They turned over the punter and the kicker, 2 rookies, but they've done a good job. So, it's going to be a huge challenge for us in all 3 phases. It's a good football team, kind of top to bottom, that we're going to see this weekend.
You didn't have the joint practices with them. Had they taken place, how much of that would you look at prior to a game like this? You have all this game footage to look at, but the matchups, would those come into play perhaps?
To a degree, it's probably a little bit more personnel-driven. I'd say in the preseason, there's a certain element of scheme that's probably not going to be factored in. We talked about this even with Miami, practicing with Miami for a couple of days and then going into the game. Your scouting report is really those practices. But then who's playing, who's available, who's in the lineup, kind of a baseline, I would say, foundational understanding. And then what you want to do, what we're doing now is going back and look at the first 5 weeks. What have they done? How have they deployed some of those people and their personnel? And a lot of players that played in the preseason game there week 3, some are a factor, some are not. There's a lot of backups that played in the game. So, but any information that's available to you, you try to utilize it to the best of your ability.
Nick, you mentioned a word that I find always interesting. You said continuity. And I think we talk about continuity because we all feel like every team is supposed to have some continuity, and we'll have that in due time. But the Saints have this. You look at the roster, and it is, they were all together. What does that do for a football team when you can have that sort of continuity on both sides of the ball? They don't have it in the kicking game because the punter and kicker are new, but still having it on both sides of the ball, they've got guys that have been there for a while.
Sure. The more time on task you have as a collective group, then it enables you to grow as an overall program or in either phase of the side of the ball or phase that you're working with. So in their particular situation, they have a lot of experienced players, a lot of players that have played a lot of football, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I talk about Davis, played a lot of football, really good football, honestly, going back to his days at the Jets. This guy's been very durable, very available, and out there. And Cam is the longest tenured Saint currently on the roster. So they have an understanding of what the expectation is on a day-to-day basis. And when they bring players like Brzee, Alante Taylor onto the team, they kind of help them assimilate. So when you build a team, when you put a program together, you got to start somewhere. You got to put a foundation in place. I would say not too dissimilar to what we're doing this season, with D'Amico and the staff and the players. You understand, here are the things that are important. Here's the standard of behavior and performance that we expect on a day-to-day basis. And then when you work with each other on the field, ultimately it comes down to communication amongst the players on the field. And do you trust the guy that's on either side of you or behind you? And the more time that you do that together, then you can play around with some different, I would say, looks, disguises, adjustments. You may be able to make some modifications in game. Hey, look, when we run this play, I'm looking a little bit more for this, and they have an understanding of what the language is. So it just allows you to kind of break down some barriers and just get more comfortable with everything that's going on around you in the midst of chaos, which 60 minutes on Sunday is essentially chaos, but you try to mitigate the chaos as best you can. And the more time you've done it collectively together, it just gives you better opportunity for success.
Nick, a fan posted a pic on social media of you and he at an airport. You were headed somewhere, I guess for a scouting trip or something. I don't want to talk to you about the picture, but I will talk to you about...
It might have been this weekend. I don't know.
Maybe it was this past weekend.
Yeah, I think
or
it was.
something.
Toucans Dan is his name.
Oh, Toucans Dan posted the picture. In
Great.
case you were wondering who took the picture with you. But where have you been this year that we might be interested in? Great college atmosphere, anywhere cool?
Yeah, so I had the opportunity to go down a little bit early on Saturday. Georgia played Kentucky, so there's two good football teams. So I'd say sometimes a lot of this is geographically based. So if there's a team or an opportunity to see somebody play where we're playing, that's kind of the overlap. So I've done that a couple times here this season on the road. So I'm going back to Saturday. I was on my way down Saturday morning just to get in Atlanta a little bit earlier and head over to Athens. And let's say Kentucky got a good football team. Let's say Georgia's got a really good football team. So it's just kind of, more than anything, you just kind of get an idea. You're not like basing a decision off of one individual game, but it's an opportunity to see large groups of players all in one spot. So as you work through your process during the fall and then transition to the off season, you kind of have a baseline understanding experience. And I'd say our area scouts and road scouts have done a phenomenal job to this point. They've seen a lot of these players already, once, sometimes twice. So this is all about information flow. So the more exposures, the more eyes we get on them. And then are we seeing things either similarly, if there's a discrepancy or gap? All right, let's go back and take another look at it. So it's a good opportunity here to do some of those types of things. I'd say this week, Houston actually plays Thursday night, so playing West Virginia. So it might be an opportunity to head over there. So just trying to maximize, I'd say, our time, my time, and try to multitask where we're suitable.
So when you're with the area scouts, do you kind of keep your notes to yourself? I mean, not that you don't want to share, but just you kind of want to hear their perspective, not clouding your perspective. How do you kind of go about that, Nick? So you're watching with fresh eyes. Okay, I watched this guy. Now, what did you guys think?
It works both ways, John, actually. Yeah. So, matter of fact, so yesterday, the group sends kind of their weekly updates, kind of a quick snapshot, strengths, weaknesses, kind of bottom line. Yep. Here's the role for the player. All right, here's what we think of the player. Here's the grade. Then I can watch them go through my process. All right, I see what he sees, or hey, what about this?
Right.
And then if we are together, then we can kind of talk, I'd say, in like terms.
Right.
And just really make it conversational more than anything else. It's not about who's right, who's wrong.
Right.
Are we getting the player in the right general area from an evaluation standpoint, understanding there's a lot of runway ahead of us that we have to get to. So, and then trying to be, I would say, cognizant of the underclassmen. So we're ahead. The declaration won't happen until the middle of January, but it's not wait for them to declare, let's go back and do a lot of work. We try to be proactive. And you have to be, I would say, prudent about how you do that, being respectful of the colleges and everything like that. But at some point, these players are going to be available. So it's really a two-way street, and it's very conversational, but they're typically productive conversations when we have them.
Well, shoot, CJ made us wait till like 2 hours before the deadline. So thankfully, he got that stuff done, but you guys are on top of it.
Nick, important question here. Fall weather is upon us now, and you're a coffee drinker. So pumpkin spice? Do we have flavored coffee? How do we take our coffee?
Interesting.
Nick? There's a certain musk coming.
Yeah, this is a caramel drizzle Keurig, but I'm a Starbucks guy, so I've tried the pumpkin spice latte. Not a fan. Sorry, with all due respect to Starbucks. So I did try the apple crisp oat milk macchiato, but I'm kind of a honey almond flat white guy on a day-to-day basis.
Ooh, that's a complicated order.
My wife is a caramel macchiato gal, so.
See, I never would have predicted this. I thought you were going to say black.
I used to be a
every-
green tea latte guy, then I transitioned to coffee.
Yeah,
however many
everybody
years
has to
ago it
give their
was.
Starbucks order because for some people it can get kind of long and lengthy.
Yes.
And
I'm the guy
add
who orders-
this, don't add this. I
I
don't
order
want
coffee.
This.
I'm out of there. I don't want to
You're
wait.
old school, Mark.
Yeah,
Yeah.
old school. That's it.
Yeah.
Nick, thanks a lot for joining us. Good luck this week.
Thanks, guys.